You are listening to the Overcome Pornography for Good podcast, episode 122, What's Possible with James. Welcome to the Overcome Pornography for Good podcast, where we take a research-based, trauma-informed, and results-focused approach to quitting porn. This approach has been revolutionary and changed thousands and thousands of lives. I'm your host, Sarah Brewer. Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast this week. Today what we have another What's Possible interview. Today we're talking with James. James, you want to say hey?
Hey.
So James is a member of Overcome Pornography for Good. He worked with Kat. I don't know how long you were in the program. Were you in the program before you worked with Kat, or did you start with Kat when you joined the program?
For a couple of weeks, I did things on my own and then jumped in and got on the whatever list you had going at the time to get somebody available.
Well, awesome. And very cool. And then we also have Kat here with us again. Kat, you want to say hey?
Hey, I'm so excited to be here. So excited.
Yeah, you were on our last one too. It's fun to have you.
Thanks.
We like. Okay, so James, do you want to just jump in and tell us a little bit about your story with pornography and quitting porn?
Yeah. So obviously I'm a little bit older than maybe some or a lot and got involved with pornography at a very young age, about 11, goes on for 40 plus years, on and off. So one of the things Kat and I talked about quite a bit, and what made the difference in all of this was the ideas and thoughts around addiction were always very, very heavy. And you've talked a lot about that in your podcasts and the program and stuff. Of going through this, that was the heaviness and the weight of that definition that I think made things even more difficult and struggle with, in doing that. And so.
Yeah. Can I ask you when?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I think my sound might be a little delayed, so we'll just roll with it. But I'm curious, when did you start using that label for yourself? Or do you remember a time when you're like, oh, maybe I am addicted?
A long time ago. I think even before the addiction recovery programs kind of came out and that kind of stuff, I'm sure I had labeled it that way long before that and just kind of felt or thought that way. Yeah. 25 years ago. Right. In doing that. So that's the kind of weight. It's a long time. Right.
Yeah.
But that's where I think the difference is the things that do, because in my mind, and I've talked to Kat about this before, when you have that thought and you have that feeling and things go on, you've got this buzz in the back of your head constantly that keep you from being present, with everything that's going on. I mean, I've got kids, I've got wife, I've got work, I've got everything else, but you always got this buzz in the back of your head. That's this addiction thing that goes, you're going to mess up at some point. That's the whole thing, right? In there, that you're going to mess up at some point. Something's going to go wrong. You're going to come across something and you're just going to binge forever. Or have problems and come back and forth. And it would go away for months or years. And then something happened. You're not even paying attention. And the next thing you know, you're back in with things. And that's where that buzz is in the back, right? In doing that. That's where when I gone through all the things that I've gone through doing, addiction recovery programs, I'm sure I met with lots of church leaders at different points, and their education is very minimal in doing things, and certainly can be because they're not psychologists, they're not trained life coaches, they're not educated around this kind of stuff, so they just do the best they can, and you have to accept that, right?
And some are a little bit more aware than others. My dad, I think I mentioned on the podcast once that he was like a bishop for young single adults. And he said to me once, he's like, I realized how much harm I can do. And so my mantra has almost become, and not every leader, recognizes this, but, my mantra's kind of become do no harm, and, which is hard to do when you don't have a lot of, anyways, and they do a lot of good too. But yeah, that can be a tricky place to be in for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to be just giving them as much grace as we do ourselves, right? In doing things. I certainly don't want to be in those shoes and think about that. Some of them aren't, and they're trying to do the best they can in what they know or what they've been, taught, and maybe their background in their own family or whatever else it is that goes across that. But those are all those kind of things that have gone on for for years and doing it. And I ran across, I think on Instagram, I don't spend a lot of time on social media, but I just getting there, I ran across, one of the posts or something on there and was like, this is interesting. I'll just go listen to something that I signed up for one of your master classes. And within minutes was like blown away, just mind in opening it, going, because you went over things like, the real difference of addiction and weakness or habits in doing that. And I went, oh, you're right. I've known the definition, right? You know those things. You teach them even to other people at times, but you don't quite put them to use for yourself. And when I started listening to that and put it to use for myself, very quickly, those beliefs started to help change, right? In how I was looking at things and looking at myself.
Yeah. Like those beliefs specifically, like maybe this isn't an addiction or.
Yeah. That this is an addiction that I don't have to. I think the first time I filled out the daily model tool that, because I listened to the master class and 10 of the I'm in completely. And on the next day I signed up and jumped right in, and I spent my lunch hour and several hours in the evening and just started going through stuff as quickly as I could, trying to absorb as much, listen to podcasts and do that, because I felt and saw some quick changes compared to what I've done most of my life, in doing that. And that's where doing that daily model came back in changing that, right? Opening, going, hey, wait a minute. There's freedom that comes from this thought of, no, I'm not addicted. I have a weakness. I'm struggling. I have a habit. I can, there's ways to overcome this. There's ways to retrain my brain. There's ways to do that. Made a massive difference. I mean, day one to where I'm able to go, right?
Yeah. So let me ask just a quick question. Sorry, I said I'm not going to talk very much, but of course I want to just talk and hear all the things about you. So before joining the program and for those years and years before, the biggest challenge for you, what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, was just the mental weight of, I'm terrified that I'm going to just struggle with this forever and that it's always going to come back and that I'm addicted and there's nothing I can do to change it. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And you can hear that emotionally.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to have that weight gone. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what that does though, too, that weight and that buzz in the back, it keeps you from being present, right? Not enjoying what's going on, not connecting, not feeling connected to your family, your friends, the people that you're with, the coworkers, right? And other things, because you're always got that sound in the back of your head that you just don't realize, right? I mean, it's like tinnitus, right? In your ear, there's that sound that's going on. And sometimes you lay there and you can't really tell, or it's been there so long. And then all of a sudden it's just really loud, doing that. And that's what it felt like from there. And it felt like the other things, I'm a visual learner and I do those things. So hearing things like about willpower and the beach ball and trying to hold that underwater, right? Makes a big difference in how you're looking at these. You're like, I've tried to hold this for so long and I try to push harder, and it makes it harder to do things, in accomplishing stuff. So just having a couple of those beliefs change quick, just opened the doors to what I wanted to do, what I felt I could do, the weight of that being gone, going, wow, I can do more. I can be present. I don't need to worry about this all the time. Right? Because it's a massive weight.
It sounds like, and it sounds like there was a big transformation just being able to like, oh, maybe that's not true about me. Maybe these beliefs I have aren't true. I see you're nodding.
Yep, absolutely. That's that's what it does when you change that belief and you grow into it. And sometimes that growth is a little quicker and sometimes a little slower. That one for me was instantaneous. It really then sparked the excitement and the energy to, okay, let's divulge there. Let's get into this. Let's dive in. Let's absorb as much as I can to do that. Right?
Very
looks
cool.
like she wants to ask a question.
So just jump in.
I just love this part of James. I just love this part of your story. And you were on the other end of this, and I hadn't been coaching in Sarah's program for too terribly long when you came to me, like I don't remember if it was our first or second session, but you were like, I found out I wasn't addicted and I don't have a problem with porn anymore. And I was like, hopefully I didn't portray this as the coach for you, but I was like, oh crap, what do I do? Like, I'm not sure how to handle this. Like, I have my client's he's already finished. Like, we just barely started. And I remember going to Sarah and being like, what do you do now? Like, I'm not sure how to handle this. He says he's already done. And he doesn't even have any problems with porn anymore. Though true and not true, right? Like, but I think that I loved that part of your story because I know this interview is not about me, but it helped me as a coach to figure some stuff out. But I want to hear more about like what that was like for you on your end, like being coached, coming to me and already being like, I don't struggle with porn anymore just because I found out I wasn't addicted.
Yeah, and it opened the doors to the other portions of it, right? What do we work on? So we'd ask those kind of questions. Okay, what do we do? Because I was like, I'm not planning on anything, right? Or you go, okay, I got the fail plan and I can fill that out and do stuff. But I'm at the point where I'm looking at it where I'm not planning on failing it anyway because of how I feel, right? And what's kind of changed in my beliefs. And once that started to happen, it just made it easier to do that. So then we were able to look at, okay, what are the other things, right? And we started to go through the emotions and the other kinds of things and the beliefs. That was the stuff that we focused on, right? That made a difference in doing that, right? Because there are things that crop up, right? You're looking at emotion. I mean, we're talking about a lot of different things that cause, buffering, whatever it is, right? If it's pornography or if it's gaming or, overeating, whatever it is, and doing things, there's so much of the emotions that we don't understand or process appropriately to get there, right? There were times when Sarah and Kat and I talked about other times where other emotional experiences with people would come up and I'm like, wow, I didn't even realize that I was going this other direction. And now I'm spending time just scrolling through Instagram or, buffering in this route because of what's happening around me. But I never even realized that there was an emotion tied to that thought or that feeling of being with a particular person, right? In the same room or doing those kind of things. So you start to learn that stuff about yourself. It's the self-awareness, right? That comes through those, and those kind of conversations.
Yeah.
And
you hear me say quitting porn is about so much more than quitting porn. It's learning all of that emotional skill, the belief skill. Like I think I said what I said to Kat is like, awesome. Now just work on whatever he wants to become. And like, what else does he want with his life? Let's focus on that. Anyways, go ahead.
Well, when we did, we started to focus on other things and talk about, because when you change that belief and you start to feel the freedom of the weight, you look at what's possible, right? And other things, because everything becomes possible. So we started talking about, what other kinds of things I want to do, what things if I wanted to do for a while that I haven't or stayed away from, hobbies and maybe exercise, those kind of things that just can make a difference in your life. Because, and I know there's a lot of people that have pornography issues and that are still able to focus on some things and have other things in their lives because it's not always there. But I just felt like for me that because that buzz was always there, I had a hard time in doing stuff for myself and I'm taking the time to do that. Right. I just tried to stay busy work in a way to keep things at bay, right? To try and hold that beach ball down, which becomes impossible, right? As you go through that. So that's where those things kind of jumped in.
I loved watching you apply all of this to other areas of your life and like opening up to like all of the pieces. This program is a gold mine for like the rest of your life. I love that Sarah offers this to you guys for a lifetime because this is what this is. It's a lifetime work, right? Like this work of learning who we are and dealing with our emotions. And so I just loved watching you go through that in other areas of your life too, and seeing how you can apply it for the rest of your life.
And it makes a difference where you start seeing opportunities to talk to others, right? To your own family, kids, right? Doing things in there. So in one of your podcasts, you brought up the book and the song of, singing with your kids of the going on the trail, right? And the mud, you can't really, can't go over it. I remember that stuff, singing that as a kid and stuff. And I remember talking to one of my kids about it. Right? They're older in doing that, but going back to that and saying, you've got to get through this. You can't just go around and you can't go under. You have to experience it. You have to allow it and be curious, right? That's where you learn in doing the program, is learning how to then be curious and give yourself some grace at the same time and figure out, okay, what's really going on? Let me step back from this. Let me feel what's going on and allow it to be there, but then figure out why, right? What is it that's causing it? And how can I change it so that I'm growing into a new belief that's going to make a difference, right? So that I don't have to continue to feel like I'm, sitting in a lake of misery forever. Right?
Yeah, which is what you did for 40 years or so?
Mhm.
Just that myth of that buzz.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
knowing how to look at that. Yeah.
Yeah. Feeling like you have good successes here and there, and, stuff would go on and kind of disappear, but then to just, rear its ugly head, right, at times. And just looking at that and going, there's a difference between sinning and, especially from a religious, spiritual standpoint, right? There's a difference between sinning, being worthy, right, and weakness. There's a difference there. And putting those beliefs that you've had and you've taught to other people, like myself, you teach them to other people. Somebody, like I mentioned earlier, don't do it yourself. That was really helpful in looking at it, going, okay, I'm not sinning. I'm not trying to do this. I've got these other things. I've got a weakness. Yes. And now when I look at it as a weakness, now I can figure out how to fix it and help it instead of just acting like I'm actively, doing something, right, against somebody or against nature, like God's laws, those kind of things as you look at it. And, some of the other questions you'd asked and looking at things, how has it kind of helped or changed in relationships and things like that? And I say that I married, I have a trophy wife. I just happened to marry her the first time. She happened to be my first wife, right? And my only, and doing that, right? She's phenomenal. She's supportive and helpful and loving and kind. And, understanding that we don't get through this life by ourselves, right? All of us have challenges, all of us have weaknesses, different things, and we have to do it together, right? In doing that. So those things have helped and improved even that, relationship portion, because then not that, and maybe she'd recognize it at this point or look at things and realize that there's that buzz that maybe I wasn't or didn't feel present, right? In doing it. But then really, then I'm experiencing it and looking at it going, oh, okay, now I'm really present. I'm paying attention and I'm really here instead of worried about something else, right? And going on. I think that really helped, and looking at it. And that helps with the relationship with Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ and everything else to understand, your worthiness in there and improve that as you go through it, because you're growing into those beliefs and differences that are so key to do that.
Yeah. Sometimes I think with the spirituality stuff, we think that maybe like really being worried about it or beating ourselves up about it and being really vigilant is helping us be closer to God. And then you stop beating yourself up and you stop the shame and you maybe think about things a little bit differently and you realize how much closer you are to God when you're not so stuck in that. Like you use the word buzz, in that buzz of worry and that buzz of shame or that buzz of like stress around it. When that's not there, you're just a lot more open to the spirituality and the spiritual side too.
Well, and when you look at the addiction recovery type programs, right, the addictions start off with, I have no power over this, right? That kind of thought and doing things. And I need to rely on, the greater power, the things. When you look at the weakness piece of it, you need to rely on that bigger power, that spiritual portion just as much in realizing it, but understanding that at the same time, I do have some ability to affect this, right? As I change my beliefs, as I do things, as I rely on that strength, right, that comes from that, whether you're religious or not, that makes a huge difference when you look at it and it's just slightly different change. But when you look at it that way, that makes a big difference, right? And then opens that up and then allows you to feel that more and feel the support and the help, right, in doing that. Because it's there all the time. It's just whether or not you're really recognizing it.
Yes. Yeah. For those people who are listening, I do have an episode on weakness versus sin. Just Google it. You'll find it. If you want to hear more about my thoughts about it, use it if it's helpful. And yeah, I love that you say that. Like, it's just always available to you. I had a little bit of a spiritual awakening moment years ago where I just realized I was doing some meditation, and for whatever reason, that meditation just opened up to me like, oh wait, God is here all the time. Like I can just breathe and there's God. God is always there, and it's the thoughts and the shame and the other emotions that kind of get in the way from us seeing that. But God's not going to go away if we're messing up. like God is just there. Anyways, I
like
think that's beautiful.
we create sort of our own smoke screens, right? At times where, we create a smoke screen in between, right? Where we're going, I don't feel this, or not doing this and acting that way, when we just need to clear the smoke a little bit and open our eyes to, let the wind blow a little bit and see what's really in front of us, instead of just standing back and acting like we can't see through the smoke or the fog. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So good. I love it. So do you have any other insights around quitting porn for us? Or even, I like to ask this one too, if you think about someone who might be going through what you have been going through for the last 40 years, think about yourself a year ago, 2 years ago, and what that felt like what insights do you have for that person?
I think I would start off with going fully in and being fully invested in doing it, right? Stepping in and doing the things that are required, right? Spending the time, right? Watch in the program, for those who haven't been in the program, there's little video clips and explanations and then paperwork, right? That goes through it. And just taking the time to do that and jumping in to it, and then when you're driving or you're walking, listen to a podcast, right? Do the things that can help yourself get as much of the information as possible up front to help, right, in getting there. So I think that's what really helped. And then jumped in, like I said, I jumped in and did that, and then went, hey, I really like to, have an individual coach so that I can ask questions. And a lot of it had to do with attending some of the group calls and the things like that, where I just from a personal standpoint didn't feel that they made as much sense to me, because the people involved were very different than myself. Some younger people, some other things in different stages of life, right? And doing that. And I went, the group thing isn't necessarily advanced. For some people, it makes a huge difference. For me, it wasn't. Getting involved in having Kat as a coach was the right choice, right? In doing that. So that's where I kind of got in there, because she's able to help me focus on, what was really important, and look at things from that little different angle and change the beliefs, right? And starting off each conversation with successes. I'd come in, I'd say this, I'd regularly forget that we were going to start that way. And she'd be, what is that? I'd be like, oh man, now I got to think about them. But it really helped me to think and go back and go, you know what, you're right. Here's this, that happened, or here's the little things. And we talk about little stuff that went through those. Is that something, Kat, or you guys do with everybody? Or is that something you see with everybody else helpful?
Yeah. I think that the wins, I think, are so helpful, especially to start out with that. And like you said, like, even when you come not knowing what a win is, like, to be able to start those sessions with like, what is it? Because then it gets us in that mindset of like, how am I winning? Where am I succeeding? Instead of, coming to it with like all my problems and all the things that I'm doing wrong. And so, yeah, we start it with wins every time. Sometimes I forget, but every time we start with wins, so that we can get in that mindset of, how am I winning? What am I doing? Where am I succeeding?
I definitely think that we started with those every time, right? That's a thing that's in my head as doing that. But those things then helped in that, and looking at the wins, and then kind of thinking, okay, what were some challenges? What kind of things are going on? And then talking about other types of emotions or experiences and things that were causing, maybe some other areas of life, right? Whether it's work or dealing with other people in your family or those kind of things, which worked then, which then helped me grow into those beliefs and change them about myself, right? Where let me look at what I can do here and what I can impact and how I'm looking at it, right? And understand maybe somebody else a little bit better. That really then started to give me more of the confidence in my journey, right? And continuing that road, instead of thinking, okay, I had all these big changes at first, and now it's kind of dragging a little bit, right? Those things helped to.
Yeah. Tell us about that, because I think some people are worried of that because they've experienced that, right? Where they're like, oh, I'm done. And then a few months later, oh my gosh, what happened? I'm not done, and so they're kind of scared of that happening when they experience some of these changes by listening to the podcast or coming to the program. So tell me a little bit about that.
So, we had that definitely happen, where spent some time with, I won't go into, with some people in the family that just, caused me to feel some emotions I hadn't really thought about, right? Or prepared for. Because there are a lot of times where you start off in the beginning, you're like, okay, I can be prepared for having urges, but yet I'm struggling with having prepared on how I'm going to handle this emotion, right? And doing that. So thinking through that way, and then going back, going, oh, okay, I can be prepared. Whatever it is, I may not know exactly what emotion I'm going to feel, but let's work on the things that I can do to be prepared for whatever comes my way.
Yeah. Yeah. Because what you're saying is, there's the urges to view pornography and you've practiced that and you're prepared for those. But oftentimes urges will come after experiencing other emotion that comes up, experiences with family that can be really hard, or work, or, whatever it is, those emotions come up. And so learning how to be prepared for those moments. And you can do that by learning these skills of emotional management and mindfulness without actually having to experience it every single little thing. You can practice it and really build that muscle so that when it does happen, you know what to do.
Yeah, because you do. You've got to be prepared for other ones, right? Even at this point in my life, we all look at how we are in the kids and even raised our own kids or doing things where you're pushed not to be emotional or feel your emotions or process those. Right. So now going back after so many years and going, wow, I really got to figure out how to allow that or be curious why that's happening and not, dive into something else. Right. Or allow it to go so bad that it is, causing urges or problems that I really now have to focus on. Right. In doing that. So that made a very large difference.
It's the difference between we're just focusing on not viewing porn and we're really focusing on getting to the root of stuff and going deeper. That's what allows you to continue your progress when you're not just focused surface level, but when you're focused on the stuff and the skills. And
because I'm not finished with things, right? Just because I had some good changes and great things that make a big impact and difference in there, I'm not finished, right? There's still things that creep in sometimes and in that, but now I have the tools and I have the ability to put them in action quicker, right? Because of that, and working through them, talking through them, right? Going back and pulling out the papers, and I keep the other papers and other things close so that if I do need, something or I think about something, hey, let's go in, right? And doing that and putting reminders up and continuing to just do things. So we all have to work on things. Yes, I can get rid of the desires by retraining my, higher brain to take over from my lower brain and do that. But there's a lot of times where the lower brain just continues to want to push, right? So it's not a one and done. It's a continued effort, right? And getting your brain remolded and trained appropriately so that it's more automatic than it is reactive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I love that. And we're human. And so we're always going to have our lower brain that just takes over every now and then. And that doesn't mean when I say that when I say take over, I mean, it's really loud and it just needs help and it needs regulation and but we're never going to be able to get rid of all of that. And so I love this idea of kind of reframing success. Sometimes people think, well, for me to be successful, I have to know without a shadow of a doubt in my mind that I'm never going to have another urge for pornography ever again. Right. We don't have to frame success like that. Success can be no, I know what to do now. And I'm not experiencing the deep over desire. And I'm not having these, what's the word you are using? The fog where I just feel garbage all the time and I'm stressed and scared. No, I feel free and I feel confident. And I also feel no matter what happens, we're going to be okay. We're going to take care of it.
And that retraining of the brain is worth every effort, right? And every, those things you talk about, right? Every lake of misery, right? You're not going to sit in one lake only, you're going to experience a few, right? It's worth every effort, every lake of misery, every urge processed, right? Every time I put one of those little counters on, right? And go through that. And I keep it still in doing it, but it's every daily model that you write out. It's every meditation. It's every new belief growth that you're going into, a podcast you listen to, every, tear you shed or grace you give yourself, every prayer or, the sessions attended that make the biggest difference in retraining that your brain to act appropriately.
Yeah, I love it.
I do too. I'm so grateful you shared that, in the experience of me saying how you came to me and were I'm good. I don't even struggle with porn anymore. And to show that, I love that you shared that story, that in the midst of all of that, emotions came up that we worked through, that we had to deal with, that even though that particular thing was not a problem, things come up and we had to work through those as we went through this. And I think watching you do that, you can see the growth. And I'm so grateful you had that experience while we were working together so that you could kind of see that and see how you can apply that in your life as you work forward. And I think it was just such a beautiful experience for you. And I'm glad that you shared that with everybody else, because like Sarah was saying, like we sometimes think like we're done, like, oh, I'm good. And then things come up and we're like not ready for them. And I love that you talked about like being prepared, putting in the work to like be prepared for what that's going to look like for you. And I think you've done a beautiful job.
Thank you. I appreciate the program and the efforts, right, and everything else that kind of go into that. And recommend to anybody that is thinking about it, jump in, right, and do it. I was really thinking about the investment in the program, right, and everything else, and there's cost to it. I get it. I'm across that. Some people can afford, can't, monthly payments, whatever, in doing it. But if you can and you can do it for yourself, it's the payback is infinite in my own opinion, in doing it again. And you're going to get out what you put into it by showing up for yourself, celebrating those wins that you do, growing into your new beliefs and being prepared for whatever, comes your way. And it's continued work. We just have to, just like everything else in our lives, we got to continue on to things and love ourselves enough to spend a few minutes. Right? It doesn't have to take a ton of time. It's just spending a few minutes to help yourself be prepared for whatever comes across, your way, and share it with others, help others. Doing this. And that's the only reason I agreed to come on and do this. Right? I don't like talking about it. I come from that age and time frame of this kind of stuff was just not discussed, in any way, shape, or form. And so it was hard to say, I gotta talk to people and put myself out there and do that. But that's part of those emotions and processing that even on my own, to come and talk and be open, about doing it. I appreciate given the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, you've done such a great job. And thank you so much for being willing, to come on and share and talk about it. And it's so helpful, right? When everyone wants to share their successes with their job and, I ran a marathon, and no one wants to share, I quit porn, but that's what people need to hear. That's what people need to hear, because there's so many people just like you that need to hear that. So thank you for being willing. And I'm sure it's, a product of you doing all this emotional work too, where you're willing to be vulnerable and come and share it with everyone. It's just awesome. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, it's made a huge difference in my life and continue to. So I appreciate it at the same time, right? In both. So if I can change anybody else's life, or anybody wants to do the same thing, just, put their time in and just put a little bit of effort into it. It'll make a huge difference. And thanks for, putting those things together, and Kat being a great listener.
Thank you so much for coming. All right, you guys, have a great week. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye. I want to invite you to come and listen to my free class, How to Overcome Pornography for Good Without Using Willpower. We talk about how to stop giving into urges without pure willpower or relying on phone filters so that you can actually stop wanting pornography. We talk about how to stop giving up after a few weeks or months. And spoiler alert, the answer isn't have more willpower. And then lastly, we talk about how to make a life without porn easily sustainable and permanent. If you're trying to quit porn, this class is a game changer. So you can go and sign up at sarahbrewer.com/masterclass, and it is totally free.